Cool.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. With Windows, I can hear some slapback. Is the sound coming through your headphones?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Try and turn it down a little bit.
Let's see if it's gone now. Yeah, I'm not hearing it now, so we're fine.
Okay.
No, there's still a little bit of it. I wonder if that's on my side. What am I? My camera settings are fine. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know how to fix stuff in Mac, but half the time when stuff happens in Windows, I'm just like, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Hi, baby boy. I'm just going to go live in a minute.
Oh, okay.
What's up?
Well, I just thought you were done with school. He just woke up, so he's going to say hi.
Hi. Did you take a nap?
Dad.
Yeah.
Bye, Dad.
I'll play with you in about an hour, okay?
Say bye.
Bye. Bye. Love you. All right. Okay, let's do it. Okay, welcome. Okay, here we go. 48-hour art check, round 219. All right, here we are.
Here we are indeed.
Okay, so...
That intro always surprises me.
like it surprises you that it's happening, or?
Yeah. I'm not expecting to be able to hear it when we're silent.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, it's different. It's different depending on how you do it. If you do it through StreamYard, sometimes you can hear it and sometimes you can't.
Okay.
If you do it through OBS, the way that I was doing it before, no one can hear it except for the audience. Anyway, I don't know. Okay. It's strange, but
it's extra weird because like you're in my headphones, but that comes through my speakers.
Oh, so interesting.
It's probably a me thing. I don't know. We were just talking about audio stuff before too, so
yeah, it sounds like your PC is a mind of its own.
It's doing its own thing for sure.
Yeah. So we've got Frank and Scott, Salazar Nation, and CircWorks in the chats already. So yeah. Today we're going to do book recommendations, and so while we're doing the art check, I would love to see comic books that you guys have read either recently or comic books that you have read that are kind of like your go-to recommendations. Those would be, and I've done this several times before on this show, so I'm going to try to do some ones that I haven't done before, and I'm kind of curious in what Mike is doing. So
awesome.
So anyway, all right, okay. So yeah, what have you gotten done in the last 48 hours?
Not much. Monday and Tuesday are my weekend. That's when my wife is off. That's when we do a lot of our, just bonding time, but also chores and whatnot. But she had a lot of work to get done this weekend, so I actually did get to do some work. One thing that she actually helped me with that I didn't consider is consolidating my outlines, because I've gone through a couple different versions of this story, and some of the changes have been big and needing like a new outline, but I still kept some of the story threads, at least for certain characters, from the other ones. And rather than consolidating it all, I make little notes like C outline 3.5B, whatever, stuff like that. And I was starting to use Trello, which I think I might try it for a future project, but Mel intercepted and was like, you're just creating a brand new project for yourself. How about you just take what you got now and condense it? And that helped a lot. I was able to delete 4 whole spreadsheets out of my consciousness of what I'm dealing with right now, which is huge. It helped me kind of streamline some of the stuff that I'm trying to do right now, which is to find all the pieces that I need to put together. So huge help, really awesome. And that's about it. If I said any more, I would just be, adding on to that. But that's the gist of it, just consolidating what I already had. Huge help. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I saw that you posted that. When you said I didn't get much done, I was like, but I saw you post like a ton. So,
well, I mean, that's the culmination of this whole year so far. But
oh, sure. Yeah.
yeah.
But sometimes just organizing stuff is super time consuming.
Oh yeah, it is. It really is. But it helps, especially if you write the way that I write, because I have a lot of like, well, at least with this story, this is like a mystery that unravels, and there's twists and stuff, and so I liked to kind of figure out some of those things in a linear fashion. So like, this is the mystery. This is how it happened from beginning to end, and now let's hack it up and figure out which pieces we reveal when.
Yeah.
So keeping track of all that, it needed a spreadsheet, and now it's in one. Kind of, it's in two, but that's as far as I'm going.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I it looks good, and I think that type of thing, really helps to kind of get things. You save time on the back end. It's like I always say. Somebody who's constantly sprinting never has time to tie their shoes, right? But they're in danger of tripping all the time, and so you actually run poorer, even though you're trying to go fast. Then sometimes just taking a moment, pausing, let's regroup, organize, get this going, and then you can go again.
Yeah, that's exactly what Mel was saying. She had a different way of saying it, but yeah, do this now while I'm here to help you, and then it'll be done, and you can stop stressing about all that and move forward. Yeah. I like this too. Well, Josh is gone. We could be Live Boys Extreme.
Okay, welcome to Live Boys Extreme.
Woo, Extreme!
Just kidding. That's a different intro. Maybe this will be the intro for Live Boys Extreme. Oh, I need this to be full frame. Gotta get my intro game going. So yeah, for me, I did this. This will only last for a couple seconds, and I still need to kind of update that, but kind of embarrassing. But I think I was kind of distracted. Also, if I'm looking back, I did a ton of other stuff too, but it feels like I spent 2.5 hours making this drip. but I also got a bunch of those scenes kind of set up. And so I have like all of the characters like in the car, and I've got them in this car. And so I've got them, different things. I re-rigged. Some of these aren't going to work. Hello? There we go. I re-rigged some of these characters. So this guy, he can bounce his head and he can talk. And then I got the jacket going so that I can come in and I can kind of like rotate that, or I can rotate that. So I've got some little puppet movements going on these guys. So that's kind of, so I am now, oh yeah. And then this one, I've got the different shots kind of set up in this scene. So I've got kind of the wide, got the close up. I've got that. And then I've got this one, which I need to fix a little bit, and kind of a close up of that. So I think I'm just one torso or two torsos away from being ready to record all the dialogue. So we've got this floating disembodied head right here. She needs. I
thought that was her thing.
Yeah, she's just. Hey, I could do that. It's a cartoon, and then I would just save myself the trouble. She could just be, and give no explanation for it.
Totally, yeah.
That would be great. I've actually already got one of the characters who's me. I've got me in this, and because I'm not actually part of this cartoon, I'm going to bring myself in as an 8-bit character.
That's what I saw you posted on Instagram.
Right.
Yeah, nice.
Right.
Cool.
So, and then I'm just going to have some banter back and forth. How they're like, that doesn't even make any sense. And I'm like, I can do whatever I want. That's why I'm the animator. So that type of thing. But yeah. So We gotta make the X symbol with our fingers. Jim, you should just come on the show. If you're just sitting there, just come on the show.
There we go.
Um,
Part of the X Boys.
so yeah, so that was my progress. So yeah, it was about what I expected to do. I'm not completely done yet, but Monday I just crashed. I was done. I didn't get anything done. My back kind of went weird from the thing on Saturday, and so anyway, so I just laid on the heating pad for a couple hours and went to bed.
Sometimes you need that too.
Yeah. So, how about challenges for you?
Challenges, just that this was days off, so it wasn't work days, but it wasn't all too challenging, to be honest, because my wife had work to do herself, so there was no real like pull of like, oh, I should be spending time. There was no time to be spent. But yeah, so other than that, no real challenges in the last 48.
Good, that's great. The challenge of no challenges.
Yeah.
For me, yeah, nothing huge. My hands and back continue to be a little bit of a challenge, but still working on that. My ears. So these are my new, I don't know which, yeah, these are my new Audio Technica AT40s. And so they completely surround my ears rather than sit on top of my ears. And so I'm just spending so much time on Zoom for work that it was really hurting. And it was causing me to have some ear trouble. So did that. And then I've got an arm wrap coming and whatever. So I don't know. Somebody should
like one of the sleeves.
No, it is a heating pad, except it's a heating pad that's in one long 3-foot long strip. And so you can wrap it around whatever you want.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because I've got one of the rectangular heating pads, but I've been having trouble getting it around my elbow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to get it back here and from like here down to the top of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how it works. But yeah, that continues to be stuff. So yeah, just normal everyday things. How about plans for you?
Plans. Okay, well, this is where it gets interesting. So I came to a decision today. I'm going to, well, as far as work-wise, that's going to proceed as normal. I'm not pulling back on anything. I'm not adding on anything extra. I know what I need to do, and I'm going to keep doing it. But as far as the expectations that I'm setting on myself, I realized today, actually, this is like before I even came on here, I talked to an old friend that I hadn't talked to in a long time. He's actually the guy that I bought my tablet from, which has saved me, and I've been able to do my work from.
Oh, cool.
Eternally grateful for that. But yeah, so I was talking to a few friends, and I realized that a lot of my problem with like my stress, in addition to the stress that everyone else is feeling about the same thing, is this idea of failure. It's that idea of, I had a deadline that I was trying to hit. I was on track to hit it. That's something that's really important to me. Like, being a person of my word and doing my thing. And I didn't. And this was after, well, I don't want to get into the whole psychology of it, but it was important that I hit the deadline and I didn't. And I think I've been beating myself up over it. I think that was a weird cadence to put on that, but at least the words came out. But yeah, I think I've been beating myself up over it. So I am psychologically, I'm going to extend my deadline. So my plan to kind of dig into a little bit more of the mechanics behind what I'm trying to do is I was going to split this up into a quarterly endeavor. So I endeavored to complete this script within this first quarter and then do the book in the next quarter. That isn't happening anymore. I'm already into the next quarter. So to put that pressure on myself that I'm going to finish the script and finish penciling and inking and all that, I mean, I'm just setting myself up for another disappointment. So the logical thing is to shift it. So I'm just going to shift it. And on the outset, that seems like an excess amount. Like, okay, well, I don't need a whole other 4 months to finish this script. But I fully understand that, hey, you know what? I'm going to finish it way before that. And it's not going to be a very neat and clean quarterly kind of release the way that I wanted to. But at least it gives me kind of an easier to manage sort of time set, because a lot of things are released in that sort of way, either monthly or quarterly or biannual or whatever. But you quantify it in some way and you try to hit a deadline. that's the one that seems the most reasonable to me. It gives me the most room to breathe if anything else happens with all this uncertainty up in the air. And hopefully it alleviates a little pressure and I will surprise myself and start getting stuff done faster, because that tends to be the case, like when you're really stressing too much, sometimes, pull away and do something else. So yeah, I think doing that is going to allow me to even have those little moments where I can pull away and read a book and not feel horrible about it, and then maybe recharge, come back and write 10 pages instead of none, and just, so that's the plan. It was a hard decision to make, but at the same time, I think it's for the best, and I think it's going to give me the best results. So
yeah, I think that's great. And I mean, you can, that's kind of the idea of sunk cost fallacy. Except without money, it's time, right? And the idea of sunk cost fallacy is you've spent money on this thing. And so if it doesn't work, you better spend more money on it, or you better spend more money on it, or you better spend more money on it. But the fact of the matter is, today you are where you are, regardless of how you got there.
Right.
And so what is the best for your project if you take a look at it today? Right.
Yep.
And I think that's great. I had to do that. It was really hard. And mine was different because it was a much smaller project, but in that animated short that I finished, I intended to do it in 4 weeks. And I did it in 4 weeks, and I sent it to a mentor of mine, and he said, "This sucks." and he gave me a bunch of, he didn't say that, but that was, okay. I'm summing it up. I'm summing up his feedback. But he gave me a lot of feedback, which basically I said, I had to sit down and say, I can release it as is and meet some arbitrary self-imposed deadline, or I can take another 2 weeks and fix the things that I now see are huge problems.
Yeah.
And so it took me 6 weeks instead of 4 weeks. And then it started winning awards, and, like it's better for it. I'm glad that I took the extra time to do it. I did feel like I blew a deadline, and but it was a self-imposed arbitrary deadline. You know what I mean? It wasn't a deadline for somebody else.
Yeah.
It was, and if it was a deadline for somebody else, I would have been checking in with them throughout the process and gotten that feedback during the thing. So anyway, so personal projects are they're a different ball of wax. So yeah. So I totally understand what you're doing, and I agree. I think it's good.
Cool.
So
awesome.
Yeah. Plans for me, I will before the next art check, which is Monday, I will finish this scene, get all the dialogue cut, and rendered. That means that I've got, well, not scene, but this whole whatever this is, this whole animated pitch that I'm doing. So I have, that's a lot. That means I need to get the final character rigged and going today, and then that would put me on Thursday. So I need to cut dialogue on Thursday, and I'll spend Friday and Saturday morning doing the lip syncing. So I'll sync up all the lips, all the mouth shapes to the dialogue, and then I'll spend Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening getting the final camera angles down and rendering everything out, and hopefully have this done by Monday. So if I'm able to do all of that, that's my plan. We'll see how that goes. It's fairly aggressive now that I'm laying it out, but it's doable. I'll do that. So
right on.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a very succinct plan too, which is awesome. You have very distinct goals to hit, and on the days that you'd like to hit them. I always like that. Yeah,
because if I don't do that, then I can just, spend another 2.5 hours making something drip.
Yeah.
So
I could get how you could though. But yeah.
Yeah. The good thing is, and I keep thinking about this because Jim always kind of teases me, who's in the chat, Jim Luhan, he always teases me about how he's like, just get it done, however you get it done, find the fastest way for you to work and do it.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about what I'm doing in defense of myself is that each time I do one of these assets and rig one of these assets, it's going to save me time on the back end, because if I need this person to talk or move or nod or whatever, I don't have to redraw anything. I don't have to re-rig anything. I don't have to set up a new scene. I take that scene, make a copy of it, change the keyframes, change the dialogue, move the camera around, and I'm done.
Yeah.
So I think because my goal is, once I start posting this, I want to do a 2 to 5 minute episode per month, which is going to be pretty hectic. But I think it's doable. So, but that's I think awesome. I have to have a lot of the assets ready to go before that type of schedule is possible. So.
Yeah. That's it's similar to what I'm trying to do with this script. Like it's fine for me to push it back now because it's not out yet. But once it does come out, my aim is to hit a quarterly, or to hit a schedule. I'll leave it at that. But to hit a schedule and be able to meet that deadline and deliver at that time, so that people can count on it. And that it takes a little bit more on the back end for sure.
Yeah, and it's good to remind ourselves, and most of the people watching, it's good to remind yourself of this as well. Most of us are in a situation where we are the team, you know what I mean? And we're actually working on things that take multiple professionals full time to do it at the speed they do it. So there are individuals out there who can get a single comic book out every month, but they are few and far between. And I'm not talking about penciling the book. I'm talking about pencils, inks, colors, letters, editing, like all that stuff. Like when you become the entire team, that's different. Because I was collaborating with somebody who hadn't done any animation before, but has done a lot of acting, and I started showing him some stuff, and then he started looking at IMDb, and he's like, "There are hundreds of people that put out these cartoons," and I'm like, "Yep,
yeah."
So it takes at least 5 to 10 people to put out a comic. It takes dozens, if not hundreds, to put out animations. And so when you're doing it indie, you do it at whatever schedule works. So,
and it depends on the person too, and it depends what you're trying to do with the book. Like there's decisions you can make to make things go faster too. If the aim is to just get the comic out. What I'm trying to do with Sisyphean Complex is also somewhat of like a portfolio piece too. Like I'm, not to be pretentious about it, but it's like my first step out into the world, saying, "Hey, I'm a creator, and I'm trying to take my work seriously. Not necessarily myself, but the work that I'm doing to hopefully get me some work from this." So I want it to be the best that I could do. That doesn't mean I'm gonna obsess over perfection, but if I have to redo a page, I'm going to redo that page for sure. So I have a lot that I want to get in line and ready to go, so that there's less to think about when it comes to that than I'm just drawing.
Good. That's great. Cool. All right, let's do it. I'm about to push a button, Mike, that will cause sound and movement on the screen.
Okay.
Don't be surprised by it.
X-Boys.
Okay. So today's topic is going to be probably not one that I'll put into a podcast episode, because it won't. I don't know how well it'll work for the podcast. But if you are interested in the podcast is available on Stitcher and Spotify and Google Play and Apple Podcasts and wherever podcasts are found. And you can go to it and you can look at CoreyKerr.com/48HR. So anyway, but today's topic is book recommendations. And so Mike suggested that we do this on Monday, and I rudely got really excited about something else. So
well, it was May the 4th. I mean,
it was May the 4th. So yeah. So why don't you kick it off? What book do you recommend?
Ooh, okay. I'm excited about this because this is a great book for many different reasons. Unfortunately, it's a bit difficult to get a hold of in its original form. So it's one of those treasure hunt type of books. It's like, but it's worth the hunt. Let me tell you, it's worth the hunt. You can find it in multiple forms. So this is, I'll cut to the chase. So Halo Jones, The Ballad of Halo Jones, Alan Moore and Ian Gibson. It first appeared in 2000 AD, which anybody who's not familiar with 2000 AD, it's a British comic, much like Heavy Metal. I believe it came much before Heavy Metal. Sort of like adult-ish stories targeted towards teenagers or preteen boys, more or less, at least in that early stage. And that's what makes this so amazing, because Alan Moore knew what he was getting into. He was like, hey, I got to make a comic for 2000 AD. This is like, gore and violence and sex and all this stuff appealing to these, hormone-fueled teenage boys. What kind of story should I do? Oh, I've got it. I'm going to make a story about a couple of teenage girls just trying to go to the mall. And how do I make that story in a way that it appeals to these teenage boys? And he pulled it off. And that's why I love this book so much. This was kind of a random find. I stumbled across a digital archive of 2000 AD stuff when I was first starting to get back into comics. I've liked 2000 AD, but obviously we don't get it very much here in the States or at all. It gets special ordered, and maybe I'd run across an issue or two in like a resale shop or at an old comic shop where somebody had traded it in for something else. But when I finally actually got to read Halo Jones, it's 3 books. It is an epic. I mean, it is an epic on the scale of like a Lord of the Rings type of situation, because it starts with a couple of girls trying to go to a mall, but it turns into something that's just absolutely riveting. I mean, it's character development. It's a brilliant story, because it's like human nature type of story. It's getting into a character and what motivates her, why she makes decisions that she makes, dealing with difficult things that happen in life, and some things that can't be explained, and other things that are caused by our choices, changes in our friends and things that they do and how they affect us. It's just amazing characterization and truly a story about the characters with no real agenda behind it. Just a great story and a great character exploration. So you can find it. These are almost impossible to find. I got lucky to find these at a half-price books, and I probably shouldn't even be handling them the way that I'm handling them, but I get comics to read, and so I have no intention of ever selling these. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. Or you could find the old progs. They called them progs for 2000 AD, where this one ran. I have the little wiki open here. It ran from it was right there, and now it's gone. Well, you could just look up Halo Jones and you can find it. They just released a new version that's colored. My personal taste is, Ian Gibson did this art with no intention of it ever being colored, and it's gorgeous art. Look at this stuff. It's beautiful. Like, it's all done with a brush. He has a very stylized kind of approach to the way that he does his figures and the way that he does his shading and stuff. And I honestly feel like just the black and white alone is perfect for this story. So I don't think it needs color. And I've seen the color version, and as an immense Halo Jones fan, of which there are maybe 10 in the world, and I'm one of them, I couldn't bring myself to get the color version. Something about it kind of took away from it. But I'm trying to create more Halo Jones fans, because this is just great comic book writing. Like, people think of comic books, you think of Spider-Man, you think of Superman, whatever. It's rare that you hear people bring up stuff that's this obscure but good. Like, this is in the realm of like your Harvey Kurtzman type stuff from back in the day, where like, okay, yeah, we found out that he was a great artist, but he was working before that. He was doing a bunch of stuff in EC Comics and stuff. This is that to me. This is like before Alan Moore did Watchmen, before V for Vendetta, before all of that, and even before Ian Gibson went on to do more stuff as well. So I could talk about this one forever. It's good. Check it out. Ballad of Halo Jones. Ba-bam. All right.
Yeah, that looks incredible. Jim Luhan has a book recommendation. He says Joe Ullman's Chewing on Tinfoil, or anything by Joe Ullman.
All right.
So
All right,
I haven't even heard of that one. So I've got to check that one out. Let's see. I'm trying to do one that I haven't done before, and one that isn't super obvious. But I'm going to recommend The Wizard of Oz. One second.
Okay. And we're gonna have some waiting music. Da 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 da. Shoobity boo. Zap it up up. And chorus back. Hey hey. Here we go.
All right. So this is a giant book. Not quite the same number of pages as Bone, but
Cool.
but huge. And so a lot of people know Scotty Young. This is not and I'm not sure where they put L. Frank Baum on the cover when it's really the Scotty Young show. But other than, he wrote it. He wrote the original Wizard of Oz. This is an adaptation. Marvel has done adaptations of books for years, and I don't want to say that they're disposable, but most of them aren't good. Like one of my favorite books is Moby Dick, and the adaptation of Moby Dick is really sterile. And I'm just gonna kind of flip through some of the artwork in this book. What you'll see is that Scotty Young, I've listened to him on a number of podcasts talking about this, but he, for years and years and years, he had been trying to break into comics, right? And they basically just kept telling him, you're too cartoony, whatever, and it doesn't make a lot of sense and all this type of stuff. And basically they're saying you don't have the Marvel style, and but if you look, a lot of I don't want to be disparaging, that's kind of out of focus, but a lot of the stuff that I see end up in kids lit in comics, I just don't think it's drawn very well, and kids like it. A lot of it is written really well. But it's not that it's in a cartoony style. I feel like it's in a fast style, meaning that I can get done a ton of this really quickly because kids don't care. And that's a general sweeping statement. There's a lot of great stuff out there. But when it comes to Scotty Young stuff, he does almost all brushwork. He does use microns a little bit. But it is fluid and it is incredible. And he was the one that, once this started blowing up, like people started loving this book, and they were getting the trades. They weren't getting the floppies because it wasn't normal comic book buyers. It was book buyers.
Yeah.
And so the trades did really poor, or the floppies did really poorly, but the trades did really well. And the omnibus does really well and continues to do really well to the point where he's just become, this monster of a name, and he can go out and pretty much do whatever he wants now. So he went out and started doing an Image book. He did a Rocket Raccoon book. He teamed up with Jake Parker to do a couple Rocket Raccoon issues. Anyway, and then he started writing. Yeah, I Hate Fairyland was the Image book that he did immediately after this. So he did this. Then Guardians of the Galaxy came out. He did an issue of Rocket Raccoon, which was like one of the best-selling issues of comic books in recent history, because of the timing of the movie and because of Scotty Young being on it, and because it was shipped with I can't remember the name of it was one of those blind box subscription services.
Bento boxes.
Well, not the bento one, but it's something like that. It's one of the Loot Crate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it shipped with Loot Crate.
Wow.
And everybody was like, that doesn't count. And it's like, okay, so I don't know. People that try to qualify stuff like that drive me nuts, because it's like, do you just not want comics to do well? Like,
right.
Like quit it. If it's not sold in the specific way that I enjoy it being sold, then it doesn't count. It's like, okay, whatever. So anyway,
Yes.
So anyway, he did that, and then he immediately did I Hate Fairyland. But it's really good, and most people are not aware that there are a ton of Wizard of Oz novels. And so there's the one that was made into the Judy Garland 1950s movie or whatever. There's a follow-up to that, which is a super creepy movie where the queen has replaceable heads, and there's guys like skating around. It's a weird
the Wheelers.
thing. Yeah, the Wheelers and Talk Tick and stuff like that. But but I think there's over 20 Wizard of Oz books.
Whoa.
And at one point in time, I had a job where I was basically in a basement by myself, shooting photos of product for 8 hours a day for months on end.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to, I can't remember how many, but I listened to most, if not all of the Wizard of Oz books, because they're all in public domain. And they're nuts. They're like the first one is not at all weird compared to the rest of them, which, I mean, you've got talking chickens that turn into princes that actually happen to turn out to be princesses. You got gender swapping, you've got anthropomorphic mutation, you've got all kinds of weird magic and storytelling. And so this book, I don't know how many of those novels they went through, but it was they got through the first book, and then they started doing the second book and the third book, and they did a ton of those books. And so if you're looking for like really weird storytelling that is just
always looking for weird.
Yeah, I mean, it is intentionally Frank L. Baum, when he wrote it, he really started to get sick of it at the end, and he was just like almost saying like, I want to get so weird that I want people to want me to stop writing these so that I can write something else. People just kept demanding that he write more Wizard of Oz books, and so he got weirder and weirder and weirder. It was very strange.
Well, I'm down. Anyway, I'm interested now.
Yeah, so it's great, and the omnibus, if you can grab it, is sometimes quite expensive, but sometimes it goes on sale for almost nothing, and so it's really good. But the trades are good, and if you get the first couple trades, that'll be the first book. But the art is incredible as well, because what I like about him is it's kind of an animation style of illustration, where you have a lot of squash and stretch in the face of the characters, and everybody is very malleable, which makes them significantly more expressive emotionally than then you get where it's like everybody has to be on model, and it's kind of like just moving the puppet around, and as long as the anatomy is precise and everybody's like super jacked, then it's
not my favorite stuff.
So that would be one that I would recommend is Oz. It's fun.
That sounds awesome. I'm definitely gonna have to check that out.
Yeah. So do you have more recommendations, or?
I got a bunch. none that I'd really thought about, but yeah, I could recommend some more.
Okay. Frank says if it's not sold in a back alley in a paper bag, it's not comics.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about the Christmas special of Star Wars. I think that's
that's the only way you can get that one now.
Right.
Well, I don't want to be cliche, but I could recommend like the standard Alan Moore Fair stuff, because I'm a huge fan of his. But I'll spare you that, because you could watch videos about all that. One that I know that you've got that I've just recently been turned on to actually is this one, Punk Rock Jesus.
Oh yeah,
that's Murphy. Great. Specifically this version too, actually, because even though the single issues are the same story and all that, this deluxe edition, he adds like some stuff. There's actually scenes that aren't in the floppy comics, and he goes and extends some panels too. So certain things that he had to fit into a single page, he does like a double page spread for, which is kind of neat. But it's John Gordon Murphy. His art's awesome. I know some people, it's a style thing, so maybe some don't dig it as much, but I do, especially since he works pretty loosely and then does these beautiful, just look at that, that's just badass. There's so much energy and stuff going on in that. Oh yeah. God. But in addition to
that spread that you have open right now, I actually did a paper in my master's on that page.
Oh wow, really? Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I wrote 12 pages of academic speak on that one.
It's beautiful. I mean, there's just so much technique going on in there, and he works traditionally too. So I mean, that's something.
And one of the most interesting things, if you look at that guy's chin as it meets the road, most people would draw the gore or the line there or whatever.
Right.
What he does is he has no line of demarcation between that guy's face and the road because they're becoming the same thing.
Ah, yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Can see
Yeah.
that. It says a lot without having to go that extra distance, which is a lot of this book, actually. It's very violent in some areas, but you don't feel overwhelmed by the violence. It's a storytelling tool, not necessarily meant for the shock value of it, except
Yeah.
for, I think, one particular scene, but that's
It's different. It's different than,
kind of
say,
meant.
Ryan Otley, right? In Invincible, when Ryan Otley does violence, yeah, those pages are just awesome. When Ryan Otley does violence, I mean, you see the eyeball leave the head, and you see, you know, the intestines cover the page, and
Mhm.
you know, and when Sean Gordon Murphy does it, it's impactful because of the restraint. It's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. Instead of the shock value, he leaves it up to your imagination.
Like this, you know, there's a lot going on in there, but it's mostly speed lines
Right.
and some ink spatter. But yeah, great book. I mean, just because it's a great story, but also that area here. Look at this. This is all making of in this
Yeah.
book. So this is all of like his pitch document. This is like his little like storyboard script ideas here. It's he even scanned in like pieces of notes that he wrote. As well as like some test pages, thumbnails, and different concept stuff here, which is awesome. That sort of stuff is invaluable to artists. I think he's even got the entire one entire issue at least of thumbnails,
Right.
which is super cool because you could reference this stuff and then go back to the comic and see what changed or what stayed the same or whatever.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Even if you're not a huge fan of his, these kind of process books are few and far between. There's not that many out. Like, I mean, there's like the unwrapped books, which are awesome. I could recommend some of those too, but there's not a whole lot that really go deep. The only other one that I could think of is Watching the Watchmen, which is, again, that's another one that's just amazing. But
and a content warning on Punk Rock Jesus. Some people might find it blasphemous or sacrilegious.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
The story, in my mind, isn't so much that as it is a commentary on modern media. Because basically what happens is they take the Shroud of Turon, extract some DNA from it, and grow a clone, and basically a TV network claims that it's the second coming, and so it becomes a reality TV show, and then you have, you know, the extreme religious right react, and then you have the extreme left react, and then you have all of the nuance in the middle. And so to me, I don't, and I'm very religious. It was an interesting look into a study of atheism versus faith versus religion, and I think faith and religion are different things. You know, I think you can be spiritual, you know, and have faith without adhering to, you know, a particular thing. And I think a lot of religions out there tend to get into weird areas that seem to contradict what they're doing, just like any organization that's been around for a while. And then I think a lot of atheists out there contradict what they claim as well. And in that book, it's really interesting because you have characters that are hardcore militant on both extremes of that issue. Then you have characters that are, you know, kind of true to form. But then in the middle, a lot of the characters that are the main characters are on one side or the other. They're faithful, but they doubt, or they're atheist, but trend towards agnostic, and maybe find some faith or whatever. And it's an interesting, very honest look at what I think, how modern society kind of takes that type of thing. And it's, you know, I think there's some heavy-handedness in it. Not a ton though. Coming from where he was in his life at that point in time, being raised religious, and then being fairly angry in his loss of faith and into his atheism. He actually wrote a really nuanced book full of very nuanced characters.
Yeah. And any areas that maybe it gets a little more intense tends to be delivered through the central character, which kind of it fits the character as well and what he's going through. So you could excuse it for that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and you definitely have kind of the unreliable narrator situation going on, because you're seeing, there's not somebody that comes in and says this is the right answer. It's just different characters struggling with what's going on. I mean, there's an ex-IRA guy who left the IRA because he's very faithful and feels like it's his religious duty to protect the main character. And then there are people that are, like still, anyway, it's fascinating. He's hinted at doing a spin-off book of Thomas, that character that is from IRA.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
I don't think I think the money's too good for Batman right now for him, but but I have let's see, where is it? Oh, it's above. I can't point my camera at it. But upper right hand corner in the back above that one is actually a page from that book. It's a nice. So nice. Yeah, so that's a good one. I like that book. I'll recommend another one. Where did it go? Scott McCloud. Have you read The Sculptor? Oh no. Okay, so this was crazy because you have Scott McCloud, and if you have ever attempted to make comics at all, you are likely to either know who Scott McCloud is or have accidentally come across instruction that he's given, because he wrote Making Comics and he wrote Understanding Comics. Both of those have become like the textbook of how to do comics. I mean, I remember when I was first getting into making comics, I was looking up things and I was listening to a podcast of people who are professional comic book creators. And they're like, are they bubbles or are they balloons? I don't know. And both of them grabbed their Making Comics book to get the answer. And they said, oh, they're bubbles. They're called speech bubbles because Scott McCloud said so. Yeah. So that's Scott McCloud is like the pros look to him. And so Will Eisner, who is like the godfather of graphic novels, he actually said that Scott McCloud is the best explainer of comic book concepts that is around. Like I agree with that for sure. so anyway, so that's the premise. Okay. Or that's the setup for this. So imagine a situation where your entire career, or at least about 10 to 15 years of your career, you are known as the guy who explains how to make comics correctly, and then come out with a comic book right after that. And so he's actually said that he was really nervous releasing this because he's like, it has to be good. It would be like, I'm trying to think of another example of it. I don't know, but I mean, you become the definitive voice of how to do something correctly that is universally recognized by everyone in the world as that content expert. And then you come out with something that sucks. That's like, that just can't happen. Right. And so he wrote this, he wrote and drew this book. And it's fascinating because it's done in slightly, I wouldn't call it a manga style, but it's got manga coloring to it, where the whole book is kind of two-tone. And basically this character, he's an artist and he's a failing artist. And then he, like, no one will look at anything that he does. And then he gains the ability to sculpt quickly, and it changes his life, and it's really fascinating. But the book itself is kind of a Will Eisner-esque story because it's very intimate into this person's life, and you get into his relationships, and you get into his communication with other people, and how he feels about things. And so it's almost like a biopic more than it is. I mean, it's definitely not Capes and Tights, but incredible story. You've got Neil Gaiman on the cover saying the best graphic novel I've read in years. Wow. So it's very decent. Content warning, a little bit of nudity in some of the romance, but nothing super salacious or anything. Yeah, I liked that one. That was a good one too. Cool. So there's 20 pounds of books between the two of them.
Jeez.
maybe I'll recommend something lighter.
That should keep you busy for a while.
So, Frank saying I had seen his books in the library, but back then, if it wasn't color, I wanted nothing to do with it. So,
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think and Gazbot and I have had this conversation multiple times on the air, but I think most artists prefer black and white, but consumers prefer color.
Yeah, maybe for different reasons too, actually.
Yeah. And I actually think I kind of agree with you, Mike, that I think I prefer Sean Gordon Murphy in black and white. I would almost not want him to color, some of the books that have colored. And I think he kind of knows that when he has Hollingsworth, who colors him?
I don't know.
Anyway, I can't remember the guy's name, which is terrible because he's amazing. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, Matt Hollingsworth, I think is what it is. Anyway, he tells his colorist, he's like, just let the inks do their thing. And so he only works with this one colorist, and this guy desaturates everything and really has a muted color palette that just kind of shows through a little bit, which is interesting because most comics are still kind of like they've backed off on the airbrushing of the 90s, but they haven't really backed off of the color palette of the 90s.
Yeah.
So you still get this like ultra violent kind of saturation, vibrance, just in your face situation, which frankly, some of the colorists are so good that it overcomes some of the inking and pencil problems.
Yeah. It really does, and in some cases hides what would otherwise be beautiful inks too, which you notice when you start to dig into the unwrapped books, the deluxe editions, things that you could actually see the inks in their raw form, which is incredible. I picked up another book. This isn't a recommend, but I mean I recommend everything that I've got, but this one is a great example of that, where this artist
is that Batman Black and White?
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror, yeah.
Yeah. If you look at this compared to what the comic ends up being, I mean, there's a lot. Like, I like it, but honestly, when you see the color version, it makes more sense. There's more depth. There's more, substance to everything, because this is an artist that knows that the work is going to get covered and colored. I mean, and is playing to that, is working within that, knowing that ahead of time. Very interesting, but also cool to see too, because you don't have to do a full Sean Gordon Murphy style kind of thing. You can leave a lot for the colorist, which is something that really hasn't been the case until more recently, when the coloring is advanced so much. So there's that too. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of comic books today, the colorist deserves equal credit to the penciler and the inker, because
absolutely
they're doing a lion's share of the storytelling.
I wish I had this book next to me to show some examples, because I mean, down to even details, it's sometimes too, where they're further defining the shape of a face and everything. I mean, that's going way beyond what coloring used to be.
Yeah. So it's definitely, so that's cool. Well, good. Do you want to do one more quick round, or should we call it?
Up to you. I'll leave it up to you.
Let's see here. I'm going to recommend, since we've already talked about Will Eisner, and this is kind of like a gimme, but
the New York?
Will Eisner's Contract with God trilogy.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. And so this has, I can't remember the 3 books, but Life on Dropsy Avenue. And so,
nice. I like that.
Yeah. So Will Eisner, he goes through, and it's interesting because, at least in this version that I have of it, the inks are brown. And so, and he's got, in some pages like this, he's got like a panelless, almost like children's book layout going on. and some of this where you've got like, there aren't panels or whatever. But then he'll go through and do panels where it's, it's very, it's very clear that there's demarcation and in those borders and whatnot. But one of the things that I find fascinating about this is it's actually 3 different books, so it's a trilogy. But I mean, you just have incredible stuff, and a lot, and I fall into this too. But I mean, a lot of people, they've got like 2 faces. They got their male face and their female face, and it's the costume that kind of separates them. You can tell them apart because that guy has an S on his chest and that guy has a ball on his chest, and that's how you can tell them apart. But with him, I mean, he has his characters actually look different.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can kind of see, we've got different body shapes and sizes. We've got different faces and, and whatever. And it's fascinating to look at how he does this. But I mean, just right over here, you've got 2 different people talking. They're very fluid and malleable, kind of plastic in the way that they're posed, but it still feels like correct in the anatomy and whatnot, because he's doing more of a gesture than he is like a model study.
Yeah.
But everybody has like a distinct look, which makes it feel really interesting. But the thing that is fascinating about this to me is he tells the story of this neighborhood. And in one of the books, it's the entire arc of this neighborhood. And the term contract with God is about a man who is very religious. His daughter gets sick and he makes a deal with God that if his daughter lives, that he will do certain things. And then his daughter dies, and it's watching him deal with his faith in the midst of tragedy. That's a fascinating thing. But the other story is Life on Dropsy Avenue is this neighborhood, and it starts out a bunch of immigrants founding this kind of neighborhood area, and it travels through time as you see over the decades. Those people have kids. Those kids, inherit their parents' homes or move away or start renting out and subletting. And then it starts to get, really popular. It starts to become kind of an expensive area to live. Then, landlords start coming in and start like capitalizing on that. It starts to become kind of a slum. It gets really run down. Then there's violence in the area, and then the city starts doing some stuff to try to clean that area up. Everything is bulldozed. A new development comes in, and a bunch of new families come in to start it. And you actually realize at the end that that the main character is the neighborhood itself, not the people in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And you just read fascinatingly the life cycle of real estate development. And it is so interesting how engaging a seemingly boring topic is in the hands of a master. I mean, it is talking about gentrification. It's talking about rent control. It's talking about city ordinances, all things that are some of the most boring and dry things that you can discuss. And it is riveting in its realness and in its authenticity. I mean, it is very human, even though you're dealing with building codes and bricks.
Yeah. Eisner's a master. That sounds, I may have read Dropsy Avenue, but it sounds kind of similar to some stuff that I read in New York as well. New York is another one where the city itself is the main character, and you really feel like these are real people. And if they aren't based on real people, the guy has lived there. He's experienced the city. Right. He's met enough people that he can conjure these almost living beings in his comics. You feel like these people exist. Yeah. And any of Eisner's stuff is worth definitely checking out.
And it's different than a lot of the early Spider-Man comics, which a lot of New Yorkers are like, you can tell that that's New York. That feels like New York, because it doesn't only feel like New York. It feels like a specific neighborhood in New York. Right. You're not exactly sure which neighborhood, but it's more down to earth. Whereas, the Avengers and Spider-Man and that type of stuff was up in the air above the city, at 30 to 120 feet.
Yeah.
Whereas this is at ground level.
Yeah.
And it's the people that you meet walking around and yelling out the windows. And
Totally. I grew up in and around the city my whole life, and even reading New York, there was even just some similarities of just living in an urban area, that kind of situation, those kinds of people, those kinds of problems are just super relatable. So if you've ever even visited a city or lived in one or are interested in that, like it's like a little window into life. It's brilliant stuff. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And sometimes very violent, sometimes very silly. Like it's just the human condition, Yeah. Yeah, Eisner's amazing. His books on creating comics are pretty good too.
Yeah, I've got those as well. He's got I can't remember what he calls them, but he's later on in life was starting to do he was teaching college, and he started to write his own textbooks. And he wrote and drew a lot of these textbooks. His main thing throughout his career was actually not making comics, but was using comics to teach.
Yep.
And so, I mean, he was drafted into the war, and I don't know how you convince the military of this. This actually is an additional proof that this guy's just a genius. But yeah,
about the service manuals.
I have some original service manuals. I found these, and this is how good I am at this by keeping them in a paper bag. But so he convinced. So this is the original.
Oh, what awesome!
The yellow pages and everything.
Oh.
So I actually was camping with my extended family, and anyway, I just stopped at this weird little thrift store, and I just looked at the cover, and I said, "That looks like Eisner." And then my wife said, look, it's got his name on it. And so, I grabbed everything that they had, which was just these 4.
Wow!
But I mean, these are the original. This is well after the war, because he continued to do it for a while afterwards. But basically, what it is you have stuff like, you've got these little comics, but then you also have stuff like this, where it's instruction manuals on how to take care of your stuff.
Yeah.
So what he told the Army is, he said, you can give me a gun and I can be, cannon fodder, or I can save lives, because comics are the best way to teach people how to do stuff. And he said, what is your biggest problem? What is your biggest death or injury problem other than the enemy? And they said, we can't get any of these soldiers to read the manuals or take care of the equipment properly. So the tanks blow up when they fire them because they haven't cleaned the whatever, or that type of thing. And so what he did was he created a character where the character himself keeps dying or getting injured in stupid ways, and it's hilarious. And then after that comic, then there's a quick illustrated guide on how to make sure that you clean your gun properly, and how to make sure that you there's even comics in here about how to fill out reports properly. And it's funny because the paperwork versions, where they're like, you need to fill out this report, they have very buxom looking secretaries that are there. And so, I mean, he just went through, and it's like, the M60 safety tool. Like, here is how to
beautiful illustration too. Look at that.
Here's how to use this piece of equipment so that you don't injure yourself.
Yeah, you dummy.
And so he was drafted into the war, went through basic, and somehow was able to not get deployed because he said, I'll do this instead. And I don't know how they listened to him, but they did. And there was a marked improvement. Every time he put out a comic about, exactly. So the preventative maintenance. So every time he put out a comic, they would see that problem almost go away. And so he was literally using comics to teach. And then he did it for years after the war. It was one of the many things that he did. If you want a good biography, read the Will Eisner biography.
Oh yeah,
it's fascinating. So
yeah, awesome stuff. Nothing tops that. I had another one, but honestly, I would say anything Eisner at all. Just load up on his stuff. Even if you look at it at first and you're like, yeah, but that's not my style or whatever. Like it's worth the investment to just learn from him. You know, he really did come up with a lot of things that are still in use today or are going out of style that would be great if they made a comeback. Just storytelling, master storyteller.
Yeah. So this is a man being married to his Jeep. Joe's dope sheet was a lot of the a lot of that stuff. Anyway, yeah, I agree. I mean, he's the master. I mean, there are awards that are named after him.
Yep.
Or an award that's named after him. That's the most prestigious thing. You know, and it's duly earned. I don't know that there's anybody that has really topped him.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you've read a lot of his work, you can see it's all different. He does different things depending on what it is that he's trying to achieve, and you know, the full breadth of what comics can do, you could find it in his work. Even things like breaking panel borders and stuff like that is stuff that was pioneered by him. But he had a lot more restraint than a lot of the people that came after him. You know, so he did set a lot of the groundwork, and yeah, a lot of people have pushed that. You know, as you should do. But this is one of those good sources to start from, and then push from there yourself. I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. Here's how to fill out the DA form 5-77.
In case you ever need to do that, of course.
In case you ever need to do that, I've got that. So anyway, yeah. So I'd recommend Eisner. I didn't know that they collected those into a trade.
I found this at a used bookstore too. Actually, this was I was in Cleveland, Ohio. We found this really awesome place that was like, it reminded me of Pee-wee's Playhouse is what it looked like. I mean, it was like an experience just being there. And he had these little drawers that you could, like a flat file that you could pull out, and you'd expect to find posters and prints, but no, there'd be like a dozen legs from G.I. Joes and Barbie heads and whatever. And like, it was the weirdest place. But anyways, he had a comics section, if you could call it that. And I found this in a shoebox along with some Howard the Duck comics and some old Peter Porker Spider-Ham. And I thought, well, gold mine. Yeah. So, but yeah, they did collect them all. So if you can't find them single, you can find them in this form, and you should be able to get it for pretty cheap too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's just a nice book.
Here's the Continental version where they're talking about paperwork.
Okay.
There's a joke in there about drawers getting tight because you're not filling out the right paperwork correctly. So yeah, it's good stuff. So anyway, comics can do anything.
Yay! And check out Scott McCloud's books too. Those are good as well.
Yeah. So
comics, just comics. Just go to a comic shop and buy some stuff. It's gonna be great.
You're probably not allowed to right now, but
yeah, don't do that.
But maybe if you're watching this video later. Yeah. There's on Humble Bundle, I don't know if it's still active, but there was who wrote East of West? Why am I blanking his name? Let's see, who is it? Hickman, Jonathan Hickman.
Okay.
And Nick Dragonetta drew it. And anyway, they've got like crazy deals where like for $15 I got like every comic that this guy had written.
Whoa.
Or something, and it goes towards charity and stuff like that. And so you can kind of watch, you know, there's ways to pick them up digitally, you know, kind of inexpensively at times.
Yeah.
Well, right now, Miles Morales is free on Comixology. So,
cool.
Yeah. So there's good stuff out there if you're looking for some stuff to read.
You can order books from your comic shops too. Actually, I got one in the mail today that I ordered. They'll send them, you know, through the mail, the ones that are still able to operate like that. So that's another way you could support your comic shops too, if they're willing to do that or they're open. A lot of comic shops have websites too, or Facebook pages there's still definitely ways to support them, and they could definitely use it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay, so we will see you guys on Monday. Go make cool stuff.
X-Boys.